Part 2. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuchi. Chapter 11. People have 3 souls and 7 spirits. Among them, the corpse dog spirit, also known as the eyes of the soul, is the soul responsible for human insight into the changes of all things in the world. If a person has a strong obsession with an object or a person before he dies, there is a certain probability that some information will be left in the pupil through the corpse dog spirit. If you use a special soul-calling secret technique, you can see the person's appearance from Du Ying's pupil, but this requires some special things, as well as drawings and pens for drawing portraits. At the same time, the special soul-calling secret technique also needs to be arranged in the room, all of which require the full support and consent of Yang Guo's Hung. So, he turned back to Yang Liansheng and quickly tapped his chest with his outstretched fingers. Zhang Fenjai, the method you used to freeze me just now, could it be the acupuncture in the novel? Yang Guo's Hung, who regained his freedom, did not have any dissatisfaction with Zhang Fenjai's sneak attack just now and his act of breaking into the room in violation of the rules. Because he was completely attracted by Zhang Fenjai's method of freezing himself just now. That's right. While nodding to confirm, Zhang Fenjai also directly broke the other party's unrealistic fantasy. However, if you want to pin the other party by acupuncture, first of all, you need to have a knowledge of all the acupuncture points in the human body, and you must have an old Chinese medicine practitioner who has been practicing medicine for more than 30 years. Secondly, you need at least 15 to 20 years to cultivate the internal strength mentioned in the novel. Yang Guo's Hung, whose inner fantasy was ruthlessly broken by Zhang Fenjai, quickly adjusted his depressed mood and immediately thought of his violation of regulations and breaking into the murder scene. When he was about to criticize and teach a lesson with a serious look, he was forced to hold it back because of Zhang Fenjai's words. Captain Yang, I can use special means to depict the true appearance of the murderer. Is this true? Yang Guo's Hung asked in surprise. Really, but I need you to prepare some special things. While Zhang Fenjai nodded to confirm, he also told Yang Guo's Hung a few things he needed. Qi Bingguan. Yang Guo's Hung turned his head and shouted to the outside of the door. Captain. The handsome young police officer who happened to be checking the second floor immediately ran to the door. Go prepare some aged glutinous rice, black dog blood older than 3 years old, and a carpenter's inkwell. When Qi Bingguan heard that the captain asked him to prepare things that were all props used by Taoist priests in reality to deceive people, he frowned and didn't want to go. However, after seeing the captain's unquestionable look, he could only shake his head and sigh and turn away. But at this moment, Zhang Fenjai suddenly called him. Wait a minute. What's the matter? The captain, who had always followed the reasoning of criminal investigation, suddenly became feudal and superstitious. He must have been confused by the young man in Taoist robes beside him. So, Qi Bingguan's tone of response was very impolite. Ignoring the other party's impolite attitude, Zhang Fenjai reminded him instinctively. Officer Qi, your forehead is dark, and the border town is moving westward, which indicates that you will encounter a bloody disaster in a short time. At the same time, the mountains and forests at the corners of your eyebrows are green, and the clouds under your eyebrows are broken, which means that the bloody disaster you encountered is related to water. So, you only need to remember one sentence, that is, retreat when encountering water. What nonsense! Qi Bingguan, who was in a bad mood, made a comment in an even more impolite tone and left quickly through the stairs. If it weren't for the fact that what Qi Bingguan was doing now involved the ritual he was going to do next, he would not have reminded him just now. So, facing Qi Bingguan's continuous anger, Zhang Fenjai felt very depressed. Du Ying was both Lin Qilan's subordinate and Zhang Qian's colleague, so Yang Guo's Hung asked them to go upstairs to identify the dead body. See if the girl who was killed by the sharp knife was Du Ying who stole the bank card and transferred millions of dollars. No matter how powerful Lin Qilan is in the business world, no matter how vicious her nature is. But she is just a young girl after all, a weak girl who has not experienced too many storms. When she saw the girl lying on the bed, especially when she saw the girl staring with her eyes wide open, the fear that suddenly emerged in her heart made her pale and keep retreating. Standing at the door, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help frowning as he looked at Lin Chalan, who was about to retreat to his side. Because he knew that if he suddenly moved away, the fence with a height of only 80 centimeters would definitely not be able to stop Lin Chalan from retreating, and the final result would be that she would definitely fall down. Although the height from the second floor to the first floor is only more than 3 meters, the first floor is all concrete. Even if she doesn't die, she will probably be seriously injured if she falls. So, no matter how angry he was at Lin Chalan's humiliation, and no matter how vicious Lin Chalan's nature was, Zhang Fengjai couldn't watch her encounter an accident. After a light sigh, he stretched out his hand and directly pressed on the back of Lin Chalan, who was retreating, and said softly to comfort her, "Captain Yang and I are here, don't be afraid." The warmth from the broad palm dissipated a lot of the fear that emerged in Lin Chalan's heart, and the comfort from the gentle voice made her feel a touch of unprecedented emotion. However, when she turned around and saw that the person who comforted her was Zhang Fengjai, who had brought her shame, her inner touch was immediately replaced by disgust. "Let go." After shouting at Zhang Fengjai with a cold look, Lin Chalan turned her head and replied to Yang Guo's Hung. "Captain Yang, she is Du Ying, the front desk staff of our company." "Thank you, Chairman Lin." After a polite response, Yang Guo's Hung motioned Zhang Qian to enter the room for identification. Zhang Qian, who seemed weak, was much braver than Lin Chalan. Although her face was slightly pale after seeing the corpse on the bed, there was not much fear in her eyes. Since it has been confirmed that the deceased in the room is Du Ying, who stole the bank card, the next step is to check the last person she saw before she died, and wait for the forensic doctor to give the specific cause of death and time of death. "Why do you enter my room to check?" Just as Zhang Fengjai and Yang Guo's Hung were guarding the door of the deceased's room, waiting for the arrival of the forensic doctor and Qi Bingguan, a quarrel suddenly came from the east side of the second floor. "Madam, since a very serious murder just happened in this building, we need to check all the rooms." This is the voice of the police from the police station explaining. "You can't enter my room without a search warrant." The voice was a little tender, but the tone of refusal was very firm. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 12. Miaoying Village. Turning his head and taking a look, Zhang Fengjai found that the person arguing with the police from the police station was a beautiful girl with outstanding appearance and figure, but with long silver gray hair. "What are you looking at? I've never seen such a beauty as my mother." Sensing Zhang Fengjai's gaze, the girl with long silver gray hair immediately shouted in displeasure. "If you are watching, be careful, I will sue you for rioting." Unexpected disaster. Just because of a curious glance, the other party got an urgent scolding with a pale face, which made Zhang Fengjai sneer and feel equally unhappy. "Girl, I see that your cheekbones have peaks, your face is not friendly, and the corners of your eyes are lifeless. You are a typical white tiger that defeats your father, mother, brother, sister, and husband's fate." His eyes swept across the career line of the girl's V-shaped neckline, and he continued to criticize with a sneer. "Moreover, although you have a broad mind in your chest, there is more than enough solitude in the ups and downs of the mountains, and there is not enough yin and yang. This shows that you have had sexual intercourse too frequently in the past 2 years. If Pandeo is not mistaken, you should be a young lady engaged in special services. The reason why you dare not let the police officer check you is probably because there are too many things in the room that prove your true identity. You are the lady, and your whole family is a lady." After hearing Zhang Fengjai's unerring instructions, the silver gray-haired girl's face changed slightly, and her eyes showed panic and anger. "Get out of the way. Special services fall under the jurisdiction of the police station, so the police officer from the police station immediately reached out and pushed the silver gray-haired girl aside while his face darkened, and then forced his way into the room. After seeing a large number of sex objects placed on the bed and table, the police officer from the police station showed a look of extreme shock. The shock was not due to the special profession of the silver gray-haired girl, but because of the way the little Taoist priest had just read fortunes. Qi Bingwen was lucky enough to find a few things Zhang Fengjai needed in several shops near the national highway in Miaoying, so he hurried back to the scene of the crime before the forensic doctor arrived. After personally handing the prepared items into Zhang Fengjai's hands, Qi Bingwen thanked him with excitement in his eyes. Taoist priest Qingxiu, thank you. You are welcome. After reaching out to take what Qi Bingwen handed over, Zhang Fengjai gave a signal without any surprise, then turned around and entered the room to prepare for the spiritual ritual. Xiao Qi, what's going on with you? Qi Bingwen, who was originally quite unconvinced with Zhang Fengjai, suddenly changed his attitude and took the initiative to thank him, which immediately aroused Yang Qiaoshan's interest. He asked enthusiastically while standing at the door looking at Zhang Fengjai, who was preparing for the ritual. At the same time, Lin Qilan and Zhang Qian also looked at Qi Bingwen expectantly. Captain, if it weren't for Taoist priest Qingxiu's early warning, I'm afraid I would have died in the line of duty now. Qi Bingwen, with a look of fear on his face, began to talk about what he discovered after leaving the scene of the crime. In fact, Qi Bingwen's dangerous experience just now was very simple. After leaving the scene of the crime angrily, he met an old man from the village. The old man told him that there were things he needed to buy in several shops near the national highway at the entrance of the village, and he personally gave him directions. According to the old man's instructions, after walking through several dark alleys, he unexpectedly encountered a group of children playing in the water. Originally, he wanted to go straight through the playing children and reach the national highway less than 20 meters away, but because of the anger in his heart, he suddenly thought of Zhang Fengjai's warning and subconsciously stopped. At this moment, several red bricks suddenly fell from the roof of the illegally built 5-story building above. Based on the speed and position of the red bricks falling, Qi Bingwen knew that if he had not stopped suddenly, at least 2 to 3 red bricks would have hit his head. Originally, he thought this was just a coincidence. When he was about to continue walking through the alley in front of him, the water from a water gun in the hand of a child made him subconsciously take 3 steps back. At this moment, 3 more red bricks hit the place where he was standing just now. As the saying goes, do it again and again, not again. At this moment, after experiencing 2 near-death disasters, Qi Bingwen had completely believed in Zhang Fengjai's abilities. Therefore, he turned around and retreated, then followed the streets and alleys where they had entered the village, and finally arrived at the national highway at the entrance of the village. After hearing Qi Bingwen's story, Yang Guozheng felt lucky for him, and at the same time, he became more and more interested in Zhang Fengjai. In fact, a very strange idea emerged in his heart, an idea to use Zhang Fengjai's special ability to solve some long-standing cases. Zhang Qian, who had never been in love before, looked at Zhang Fengjai, who was busy in the room, with a look of interest in her eyes. But what she doesn't know is that when a girl becomes interested in a man, it means that she is not far from falling. As for Lin Qilan, who seemed to have a very disgusted look on her face, but actually had a subtle change in her heart, she lowered her head and didn't know what she was thinking. Zhang Fengjai, who was pouring the black dog's blood into the ink fountain, stopped suddenly, with a look of doubt in his eyes. When he reminded Qi Bingwen that he would retreat when encountering water, he could tell from his appearance that Qi Bingwen would encounter a fatal disaster. As long as you can survive the disaster safely, you can rest easy in a short time. But according to what Qi Bingwen said just now, the 3 red bricks that fell the second time would also kill him directly. This situation can only mean that either he had read his face wrong just now, or someone who was also proficient in Taoism secretly changed his fate. Combined with the kind-hearted old man he unexpectedly met, Zhang Fengjai had a very strong feeling in his heart that there must be a Taoist master hidden in Miaoying village. However, the other party did not deliberately target him, so Zhang Fengjai was too lazy to investigate the other party. Using the red line of the ink fountain soaked in black dog blood, he surrounded Du Ying in the air, then took out an unused piece of yellow paper from the bag, and began to draw runes like dragons and phoenixes with his hands stained with black dog blood. After drawing the runes, he sprinkled a handful of aged glutinous rice on the four corners of the bed. Standing on the bed after taking off his cloth shoes, Zhang Fengjai took a deep breath, then threw the talisman paper in his hand directly to Du Ying, and shouted softly, "Burn!" Just like lighting the incense sticks and eyebrow pencils, the yellow paper with runes painted on it burned automatically without any external force. This shocked Zhang Qian and Qi Bingwen, who saw this strange phenomenon for the first time, and reminded Lin Shalan of the story of the Rat River ghost hand that her grandfather had told her. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 13. Miaoying Village. Disperse. When the yellow paper full of runes burned, Zhang Fengjai quickly made a gesture like an eagle taking off with his fingers and printed directly on the burning yellow paper. Then, the burning yellow paper immediately separated into 12 tiny lines of fire, which fell directly on the red line of the ink fountain hanging beside the bed. Call. Immediately afterwards, the entire red line of the ink fountain burned like stars blazing a prairie fire, and a fire net was outlined between it and the burning yellow paper. Zhang Fengjai, be careful. When she saw the fire net that quickly enveloped the entire bed and was about to burn Zhang Fengjai, the kind-hearted Zhang Qian quickly reminded him. Turning to Zhang Qian and shaking his head with a chuckle, Zhang Fengjai allowed the fire net to penetrate his body, then brought the index and middle fingers of his left and right hands together and drew them in front of his eyes. If someone stood in front of Zhang Fengjai at this time, he would be able to see that red flames that were like blood were also igniting in his eyes. Eyes burning with red flames stared closely at Du Ying's wide-open pupils. The originally blurry shadow gradually became clearer and began to break away from the shackles of the pupils. When the shadow was completely out of his pupils, Zhang Fengjai stretched out his hand to suck on the shadow, and then patted it directly on the drawing paper placed at his feet. After waving his hand to extinguish the burning red lines of the ink fountain and carefully putting them away, Zhang Fengjai immediately started drawing quickly on what others saw as a piece of white paper. Since the shadows are printed on white paper, there is no need to consider the overall layout and conception of the painting. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai, who wrote like a master, spent less than 2 minutes to clearly depict the true appearance of the shadow. Captain Yang, this is the appearance of Du Ying's murderer. Handing the painted portrait to Yang Guo's Hung, Zhang Fengjai reminded him solemnly. Qi Bingwen, immediately take this portrait and interrogate all the residents in this building to see if they know or have seen the person in the portrait. Directly handing the portrait into Qi Bingwen's hands, Yang Guo's Hung chose to believe Zhang Fengjai's instructions. Yes, Captain. After taking the portrait, Qi Bingwen turned around without a trace of doubt to trace the origins of the characters in the painting. Zhang Fengjai, I didn't expect your painting attainments to be so high. Recalling the clear appearance and characteristics of the characters in the painting just now, Zhang Qian, who also likes the painting, couldn't help but praise it. Excuse me, that's just a special way of describing it, it can't be called a painting technique. After Zhang Fengjai said politely, he turned around and entered the room to collect the glutinous rice on the corner of the bed and put the remaining black dog blood into the bag. Captain, the forensic doctor is here. Just when Zhang Fengjai had just cleaned up all the traces left by his practice, another policeman ran to Yang Guo's Hung to report. Let them in. After giving the order, Yang Guo's Hung signaled Zhang Fengjai to leave the room with him quickly. Standing by the fence at the door, he watched Chi Bingwen's family questioning the origin of the man in the portrait. However, judging from the shaking of each tenant's head, it seemed that no one knew or had seen the man in the portrait. This made Zhang Maple Leaf and Yang Guozheng couldn't help but frown. After spending nearly 7 minutes interrogating 29 tenants, Chi Bingwen returned to Yang Guozheng with a frustrated look. "If I can tell the origin of this person, can you not arrest me?" Just when Yang Guozheng was planning to further expand the scope of tracing the murderer, the girl with long silver gray hair leaning against the wall accidentally saw the picture in the portrait, and a sly look flashed in her eyes. "Girl, no matter what profession you are in, as long as you are not caught on the spot violating laws and disciplines, no one can convict you, and no one dares to arrest you." The silver gray-haired girl actually knew the murderer in the portrait, which made Yang Guozheng couldn't help but feel happy, and he immediately gave a relatively cryptic answer in accordance with the regulations on character management. "Girl, if you can tell the origin and whereabouts of this person, then Pandeo will help you calculate your luck for free, but it will only be limited to wealth or marriage." Seeing a trace of hesitation flashing in the eyes of the silver gray-haired girl, Zhang Fengjai, who was eager to cut off the causal relationship with the bank card, also made his promise. "Real?" the girl with long silver gray hair immediately asked excitedly. "Pandeo never lies." Zhang Fengjai nodded seriously and confirmed. "Give me a portrait." The girl with long silver gray hair immediately reached out and gestured to Chi Bingwen. "His name is Yang Zongwei. He is 29 years old. He is a repairman at Jinai Automobile Factory in the development zone. He and Du Ying are both from Yangtao Village, Qingyang Town, Sishui County." After returning the portrait in his hand to Chi Bingwen, the girl with long silver gray hair introduced it in detail. Besides, it was exactly 40 minutes before he left Du Ying's room. After hearing the introduction of the silver gray-haired girl, Yang Guozheng's eyes lit up, but he did not immediately issue an order to pursue him. Instead, he turned to Zhang Fengjai and asked, "Can he be tracked?" "No." Zhang Fengjai shook his head and explained. "First of all, without his personal belongings, I can't collect his breath. Secondly, he has just killed someone, and the murderous aura and evil spirit gathered in his body in a short period of time will affect the tracking spell." Seeing that Zhang Fengjai could not use magical means to track down the murderer, Yang Guozheng immediately used his criminal investigation skills and began to arrange the investigation and pursuit tasks in an orderly manner. "Little Taoist priest, start to fulfill your promise now." Walking straight in front of Zhang Fengjai, the silver-gray long-haired girl gestured with expectation in her eyes. "What do you want to ask?" Knowing that he could no longer intervene in the investigation and pursuit of the murderer, Zhang Fengjai wanted to fulfill his promise immediately and then do the second thing to leave Shushan. "You promised marriage, and I will pay for the fortune." The silver-gray long-haired girl asked with a hint of cunning. "One divination costs 1,000 gold, are you sure you can come up with so much money?" Zhang Fengjai asked with a smile. "How much is 1,000 gold?" The silver-gray long-haired girl, who didn't know the specific number, hurriedly asked. "One divination for marriage starts at 10,000, one divination for fortune starts at 100,000, and one divination for fortune starts at 1 million, Zhang Fengjai continued to reply with a smile. However, if you look closely, you will find a hint of helplessness in his smile. Because the yin-yang, 5 elements and the innate numerology in Taoist magic involve the secrets of heaven, Taoists who come into contact with this magic will face the tragic end of 5 disadvantages and 3 deficiencies. The 5 disadvantages refer to widowhood, orphanage, loneliness, and disability. The 3 deficiencies refer to money, life, and power. Because the third grandfather was a Taoist who practiced magic, he leaked too many secrets related to the secrets of heaven when he was young and energetic, and he was eventually implicated, causing the great-grandfather to have no children in his life, causing the second grandfather to never marry because of his physical disability, and causing his parents to be accidentally killed 18 years ago. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yuchi. Chapter 14. In order to preserve the only bloodline of the Zhang family, the great-grandfather who was proficient in medicine cooperated with the third grandfather to change his fate against the will of heaven. Although the secret method of changing his fate against the will of heaven successfully allowed him to avoid the 5 disadvantages of being a widower, a widow, a loner, a single person, and a disabled person, and the 3 deficiencies of life and power, his fortune in terms of money not only did not change, but the retribution for the leakage of the secrets of heaven was all imposed on his fortune. In other words, if he wanted to make money by using magic, he would need to use 99% of the proceeds for charity, and he could only keep 1% of the money for consumption and enjoyment, which was why he was rarely willing to take the initiative to tell fortunes for others. After all, the net worth of a truly wealthy person in Shushan was only a few $100,000. Even if all of it was used for fortune-telling, only a few thousand yuan would fall into his hands in the end. Zi. After hearing the gold for Zhang Fenjai's calculation of marriage, wealth, and fortune, several people at the scene couldn't help but take a breath. Even Lin Chalan, who was worth over 100 million, looked at him with a shocked and complicated look. Zhang Qian, who had originally planned to ask him to calculate her marriage, directly extinguished her unrealistic extravagant hopes. It's so expensive. After sticking out her tongue playfully, the silver-gray long-haired girl could only choose marriage. Girl, if you follow my advice, you'd better calculate your fortune. Although the silver-gray long-haired girl in front of her seemed to be fierce and arrogant, and her industry was also relatively special, she was actually a kind-hearted girl with a clear distinction between love and hate. Zhang Fenjai really didn't want to destroy her inner fantasy of love. No. In the face of Zhang Fenjai's suggestion, the silver-gray long-haired girl shook her head and refused. It is far more important to find a man who loves me for the rest of my life than to make money. Seeing the silver-gray long-haired girl's resolute attitude in calculating her marriage, Zhang Fenjai could only follow her advice and then carefully observe her appearance. But the conclusion he finally came to was exactly the same as the fortune-telling that just identified her as a special service staff. Alas! After a light sigh, Zhang Fenjai said solemnly, "Girl, your parents' palace below your eyebrows and your brothers and sisters' palace above your eyebrows are both dark, which means that you are a lonely person without a father or mother, brothers or sisters, or what is commonly known as an orphan." Yes. Since Zhang Fenjai had mentioned this in his fortune-telling at the beginning, the silver-gray-haired girl nodded in agreement without much shock. But this also made Lin Chalan and Zhang Qian feel even more surprised. After all, it was too shocking to be able to see the other person's true origin just by observing the face. At the same time, there is a broken mark on the spouse's palace on both sides of your eyebrows, which directly blocks your marriage line. This means that you will never meet a man who truly loves you in this life, and there will be no marriage for the wedding night. Master, do you have any means to resolve it? Since she fell in love at the age of 14, until she just celebrated her 23rd birthday yesterday, in less than 10 years, she has actively pursued no less than 10 men. Except for a few middle-aged uncles who coveted her youthful beauty and figure and had made marriage promises that were impossible to fulfill, the remaining men rejected her without hesitation. Therefore, the silver-gray long-haired girl instinctively chose to believe Zhang Fenjai's marriage prediction, but she was more eager to change her marriage. Girl, your fate has an exclusive evaluation in physiognomy, that is, the white tiger evil star, lonely and old for life. After shaking her head and denying that she had the means to resolve it, Zhang Fenjai said with a trace of pity in his eyes. Generally, people with this kind of fate have been unlucky in their fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters since childhood. When you grow up, you will be unlucky in your husband and son, and there is no way to resolve it. Master, will I really be lonely and old for life in this life? The silver-gray long-haired girl asked somewhat disheartenedly. a beautiful girl who has been fantasizing about love like a Prince Charming since childhood. When she learned that she would neither be loved nor loved by a prince in the future, you can imagine how much of a blow she would suffer in her heart. Seeing the brilliance of the silver gray girl's pursuit of life gradually dimming, the position of the life palace and the forehead even showed a hint of black. This shows that the other party is very likely to make the impulse to end his young life in advance under the influence of discouragement. Although the use of physiognomy to predict marriage leads to the other party's accident, it will not be implicated by the consequences, but apart from the other party's fierce and arrogant personality and special profession, the silver gray long-haired girl is actually a very good girl. Moreover, although the fate of the white tiger evil star is relatively bumpy in marriage, its achievements in wealth and luck are far beyond the ordinary fate. Therefore, Zhang Fengjie does not want to cause a good girl to die because of his true marriage fortune-telling. Girl, don't lose the pursuit of love, because you are not completely without hope of marriage. Reaching out and lifting the silver gray girl's chin, looking directly into her eyes that are gradually losing their brilliance, Zhang Fengjie reminded her solemnly. In fact, as long as you can find a man with the fate of Qing Long Kanga, you can not only be together in love, but also light up the palace of children and have your own happy marriage. Master, who is the man with the fate of Qing Long Kanga? The shock from sadness to joy made the girl with long silver gray hair fully realize her desire for love, so she urgently wanted to know who the man in this world was qualified to marry her. February 2nd, the dragon raises its head. Seeing the light of pursuit of life rekindled in his eyes, and after retracting his right hand that was pressed against the chin of the silver gray-haired girl, Zhang Fengjie replied with a smile. Any male born on the second day of the second month of the second lunar month in an even-numbered lunar calendar has a trace of Qing Long Kanga's destiny, and he also has the ability to restrain your white tiger evil star destiny. Master, thank you. Although the restriction of the second day of the second month of the second lunar month in the even-numbered lunar calendar will make it more difficult for her to find her lover, it is still better than the fate of a lonely life. What's more, she can even do a special profession that is not humiliated by others, so how can she not have special means to find the man who is destined to be Qing Long Kanga? Therefore, the silver gray-haired girl who rekindled her pursuit of life and love smiled her most beautiful smile and bent down to thank Zhang Fengjie. Girl, according to the rules I have set for myself, although I cannot predict your wealth and destiny, I would like to remind you in kind. After waving his hand to indicate that the other party did not need to be so polite, Zhang Fengjie thought for a while and finally decided to say one more word of reminder. No matter what career you choose in the future, your income will far exceed the current career you are engaged in. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 15. Master, I will throw away all the things in the room now, and then go to do the cosmetics sales business. Zhang Fengjie, who has the ability to predict fate, has left an unfathomable and omnipotent impression in the heart of the silver gray long-haired girl. So, after hearing his reminder, she nodded and agreed without hesitation, and in less than a second, she made a new career plan for her life. Then, the silver gray long-haired girl turned back to her room. In less than 3 minutes, she came out with a bulging black garbage bag. When passing by Zhang Fengjie, the silver gray long-haired girl's casual question caught him off guard. Little Taoist, I wonder when you were born. I never tell others my birth date. Zhang Fengjie, with a panic in his eyes, immediately refused to answer the other party's question. He. After leaving a series of silver bell-like proud smiles, the silver gray long-haired girl ran out of the door happily. Little Taoist priest, you are so lucky. Looking at the silver gray long-haired girl who was emitting youthful vitality again and was planning to turn over a new leaf, Yang Guozheng reached out and patted Zhang Fengjie on the shoulder, teasing with a strange smile on his face. Captain Yang, I wanted to tell you about your career for free, but now it seems that it is not necessary. Faced with Yang Guozheng's teasing, Zhang Fengjie couldn't help but roll his eyes and hit back. Quickly putting away the teasing smile on his face, Yang Guo's Hung tightly grasped Yu Hairan's arm and admitted his mistake in a flattering manner. Xiaozhang, I was wrong. I promise I will never make jokes in the future. Qi Bingwen's personal experience with the silver-gray long-haired girl has fully proved Zhang Fenjai's amazing predictive ability in physiognomy. And career is equivalent to wealth. With the divination fee Zhang Fenjai just offered, if you want him to tell you about your career, you need at least 100,000 Chinese yuan, which is almost the sum of Yang Qiaoshan's 2-year salary and funds. Although he is not a person who is keen on climbing up the career ladder, his many years of experience in the system have taught him that the higher the official position, the greater the power, and the more good things he can do for the people. This is also the reason why he chose to become a people's policeman. Captain Yang, due to the continuous use of the secret methods of tracking and fortune-telling, my own energy and spirit have been greatly consumed. It is not convenient to continue to tell fortunes in a short period of time, so when I have free time, I will come to your door in person to tell fortunes for you. As long as the physiognomy does not involve the calculation of fate, the rest depends entirely on vision and experience, and there is no consumption of energy and spirit. The reason why Zhang Fenjai did not tell fortunes for Yang Guo's Hung immediately to predict his career was actually for his own career and safety. After all, the positions in the system are 1 carat 1 pit. If he said in front of everyone that he would have a prosperous career in the future, it would inevitably arouse the vigilance and small actions of some people with ulterior motives. In this way, it would change his original career trend, and even in serious cases, it would endanger his life. Okay, when you are free, just call me directly, and then I will drive to you in person. Yang Guo's Hung, who had no doubt that Zhang Fenjai was deliberately delaying the divination time, smiled and nodded in agreement. Although Du Ying, who stole the bank card, was accidentally killed, it was impossible to completely clear Zhang Fenjai of suspicion, but both Yang Guo's Hung, who was in charge of the case, and Lin Qilan, who took the initiative to report the case, had completely believed that he was innocent. So, after signing his name on the interrogation record, Zhang Fenjai was able to leave the crime scene freely. However, he could not leave Ningji City for the time being before the murder case was completely closed. After leaving contact information with each other, Zhang Fenjai followed Lin Qilan and Zhang Qian to leave the crime scene, and then came to the parking lot of the North Bus Station. Zhang Qian, get in the car. After opening the door of the red Ferrari sports car, Lin Qilan said to Zhang Qian with a frosty face. Yes, Chairman. She stuck out her tongue at Zhang Fenjai playfully, then quietly slipped him a piece of paper with a mobile phone number, and then Zhang Qian bent over to get into the sports car. Then, the Ferrari sports car quickly disappeared in front of Zhang Fenjai, who had just raised his arm, like a red shadow. Ah! Putting down his raised arm, Zhang Fenjai couldn't help but sigh. Originally, he wanted to ask Zhang Qian about the address of Ningji Medical College so that he could fulfill his second wish of leaving Shushan and find his long-cherished sister Jinjiao. Now it seems that he can only continue to trouble others. Looking up at the environment around the station, Zhang Fenjai immediately found the object of trouble. When leaving Shushan, his second grandfather once told him that if he encountered trouble when he was out, he should find the police, and if he wanted to ask for directions, he should find the traffic police. At the intersection 100 meters away from him, there happened to be a traffic police directing traffic. Carrying the bag directly behind him, Zhang Fenjai quickened his pace and rushed to the intersection. Young man, please stay. Just as he passed the wall on the south side of the station, a kind old man, about 60 years old, with a head full of silver hair, sitting on a stool in the corner, suddenly called him and reminded him with a compassionate look in his eyes. Young man, I see that your forehead is black and the evil spirit is rushing to your head. You may have a bloody disaster in the near future. Old man, are you sure that the person who just made the prediction is a junior? Zhang Fenjai suddenly stopped and asked with disbelief in his eyes. When he was 3 years old, He practiced Taoism and medical skills. When he was 13 years old, his Taoism skills entered the realm of minor success. When he was 17 years old, even the third grandfather could no longer see his fate. Unexpectedly, just after arriving in Ningji City, a fortune teller who stood up randomly on the street could tell his future fortune. How could Zhang Fengjai not be extremely shocked? That's right. The white-haired old man nodded with a kind smile, then closed his eyes and said nothing. Due to the sudden command from the other party, he was temporarily absent-minded, so he did not carefully observe the other party's appearance and aura. At this moment, the other party showed an incomprehensible expression without speaking, which aroused a trace of suspicion in him. After carefully observing the other party's appearance, a terrifying cold light flashed in his eyes. Since ancient times, whether it is fortune tellers who criticize fortune telling, feng shui masters who criticize yin and yang and the five elements, or Taoist priests who catch ghosts and subjugate demons, the reason why they are called charlatans has a lot to do with the swindlers who show off in front of them. Originally, with his unwillingness to meddle in other people's affairs, he didn't bother to pay attention to the other party's deceptive methods as long as the other party didn't provoke him. But now, the other party dared to make trouble on Tai Sui's head. How could Zhang Fengjai spare the other party lightly? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 16. Stepping up to the white-haired old man, Zhang Fengjai pretended to be very nervous and asked. Old Immortal, I wonder what kind of bloody disaster this junior is about to encounter. Young man, the palace of misfortune and the palace of wealth above your eyebrows are turning black at the same time, and the palace of male and female under your lips is dim, which means that you are about to encounter the bad luck of losing both your life and wealth. Slowly opening his eyes, after carefully looking at Zhang Fengjai's face, the white-haired old man pretended to have a solemn look and said, Old God, what should I do? The comment made by the white-haired old man just now made Zhang Fengjai almost laugh out loud. Because the other party even mistook the most basic facial position, it is enough to show that the other party does not even have the ability of half a bottle of physiognomy. He only relies on the essence of deception and relies on deception, frightening, guessing and deception to deceive people. Fortunately, his relatively good psychological quality allowed him to quickly lower his head and adjust his emotions while pretending to be panicked and begging. It's not that there are no ways to resolve it, it's just that. Seeing the fish easily taking the bait, the white-haired old man felt very proud. At the same time, he glanced at the baggage he placed on the ground. After a greedy look flashed in his eyes, he rubbed his fingers with an embarrassed expression on his face. Old God, I understand. How could Zhang Fengjai not know what the other party meant by rubbing his hands? He quickly nodded in agreement and took out a coin from the interlayer of the Taoist robe, a coin with a face value of 10 cents, and then handed it to him with an expression of reluctance. In front of the white-haired old man. Looking at the dime thrown on the roadside without anyone picking it up, the white-haired old man couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth, and then the kindness on his face was replaced by anger, and he directly knocked away the coin handed by Zhang Fengjai. Scolded coldly. Roll. Seeing the white-haired old man finally tearing off his hypocritical mask, Zhang Fengjai sneered in his heart, quickly picked up the coins that had been knocked away, then reached out and held the white-haired old man's arm tightly, shouting at the top of his lungs. Old God, please show mercy and save this little one's life. As long as you can save my life, when I return to the village, I will definitely place a memorial tablet in your honor, and then offer 3 sticks of incense to you every day. The station is a prosperous place where the urban population gathers. The liveliness can satisfy one's sense of voyeurism. Therefore, after hearing Zhang Fengjai's hoarse shouts, everyone around the station immediately gathered around. The white-haired old man whose arm was being held tightly was even more angry and his face was livid. The reason for his anger was not only Zhang Fenji's seemingly unintentional but actually intentional curse, but also the reason why he was being watched by everyone. Because enshrining tablets and lighting incense are used to worship the dead, the other party is clearly cursing themselves to die. At the same time, he was even more worried that everyone around him would see through his deception. "Okay, let me help you." Seeing more and more people gathered, the white-haired old man could only accept the coin as he thought he was unlucky, and then nodded in agreement to Zhang Fenji's request. "Thank you, old immortal, thank you, old immortal." Zhang Fenji, whose face immediately showed gratitude, quickly thanked the white-haired old man. "This is a fairy talisman that I drew myself. When I get back, I will stick it on the bedside. After 3 days, the disaster will disappear naturally." He took out an old talisman from his pocket and handed it to Zhang Fenji. The white-haired old man warned impatiently. "Thank you, old god." After thanking him, Zhang Fenji happily took the spell, but after careful observation, he said with a puzzled look on his face. "Old immortal, the immortal talisman you gave is wrong. Boy, if you feel something is wrong, then return the immortal talisman to me." Seeing the poor Taoist-robed boy in front of him, the white-haired old man who was asking endless questions and whose patience was about to be exhausted, directly stretched out his hand to ask for various charms with a livid face. He took 2 steps back, temporarily staying away from the white-haired old man's outstretched right hand. Later, Zhang Fenji took out a spell he drew himself from his bag, gestured to the people around him, and then said to the white-haired old man, "Old fairy, this talisman was given to me by the old fairy in our village. Why is it different from the talisman you drew?" Among the people watching the excitement around, there were both passers-by and citizens living nearby. At this time, he definitely did not show the slightest bit of timidity. Otherwise, he would not be able to gain a foothold in this place where he is making money every day. Therefore, the white-haired old man immediately put on an arrogant expression and gave a deceptive evaluation to the charm Zhang Fenji took out. "How can the ghost talisman drawn by a mere liar be compared to the fairy talisman that I spent so much effort on?" Yet, holding the talisman he drew between the index and middle fingers of his right hand, Zhang Fenji sneered and asked a question before throwing the talisman directly at the white-haired old man, then squeezing it with his hands and chanting the incantation. The 3 pure ones show their divine power, and the heavenly fire subdues the devil. As Zhang Fenji pinched and recited the incantation, the talisman floating above the head of the white-haired old man automatically burned, which immediately caused continuous sighs from everyone around him. "Look, this is the real immortal talisman." "That's right, I don't know if this young man wearing Taoist robes still has such an immortal talisman in his hand." "Yes. If there were, I would definitely spend a lot of money to buy it." Of course, there were also many young people who believed in science at the scene, who thought they had exposed the reason why the charm had spontaneously ignited just now. "Tch, it must be a talisman drawn with natural pigments, what's all the fuss about?" In fact, I also suspect that the talisman that the boy used just now is very likely a magic prop. "That's right. I remember that in the foreign blockbuster released some time ago, there was a prop coin that could self-ignite." The loud doubts of several young people made several rich people who originally wanted to spend a lot of money to buy the talisman give up the idea of buying it afterwards. Originally, he just wanted to expose the deception of the white-haired old man through the means of the talisman's self-ignition, but after hearing the doubts of several young people around him, the youthful blood in his bones that had not completely disappeared made him suddenly want to prove the existence and mystery of Taoism. So, while the flame of the talisman was still burning, he continued to pinch his fingers and chant the spell. The 3 pure ones show their gods, and the fire dragon descends to the mortal world. As Zhang Fenji pinched his fingers and chanted the spell, the burning flame was quickly stretched, and then turned into a ferocious fire snake. "Ah! When the white-haired old man saw the burning flame of the talisman above his head turn into a vivid and ferocious fire snake, he couldn't help but scream and fainted. The young men who had just questioned Zhang Fengjai lowered their heads as if they had been slapped in the face, and stopped self-righteously criticizing him. Disperse. He just wanted to prove the existence of Taoism, not to deliberately hurt anyone. So, after seeing that the fire snake transformed by the talisman had achieved a shocking enough effect, Zhang Fengjai lightly snapped his fingers, and the fire snake immediately turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared without a trace. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 17. Well. Seeing the white-haired old man who was directly frightened and fainted by the fire snake, Zhang Fengjai couldn't help but shook his head and sighed softly, then bent down and took out a silver needle that exuded a cold light, and then pricked the other person's body. Immediately afterwards, the unconscious white-haired old man slowly woke up. After putting the talisman back into the opponent's hand and taking back his own dime, Zhang Fengjai walked towards his baggage and said with an indifferent expression, "The way of spells requires not only a deep understanding of the meaning and origin of each rune, but also the spiritual power cultivated over many years. If you can't do the above 2 points, then please don't waste the way of spells." He bent down to pick up the baggage on the ground, and while gently throwing it behind his back, he continued to warn indifferently. "The palace of misfortune is above the right eye, and the palace of male and female is at the corners of the eyebrows. If you can't even recognize the most basic facial features, how are you qualified to predict other people's fates? I hope you will not continue to deceive others in the future. Otherwise, it will not only increase your sins, but also reduce your longevity." After the reminder, Zhang Fengjai quickened his pace and ran straight to the road dozens of meters away before everyone could fully react. It turns out that the fake Li Kuei met the real Li Kuei. I deserve what happened to me today. Hearing the Taoist robe young man's knowledge of spells and fortune-telling, how could the shrewd white-haired old man not guess the other party's true identity? This made him secretly shout out that he was unlucky, but at the same time, he didn't care at all about Zhang Fengjai's warning just now. But what made him feel extremely annoyed and depressed was that he might not be able to stay at the North Bus Station, a place where he was making a lot of money every day. Now that the excitement is over, the crowd of spectators has gradually dispersed. But there was a beautiful girl with long hair shawl, wearing a light blue lapel waist dress. Her eyes were chasing Zhang Fengjai, who was heading straight to the crossroads, with a look of thinking in her eyes. "Hello, girl." After walking quickly to the intersection and seeing the pure face under the white-brimmed hat, Zhang Fengjai discovered that the traffic policeman in charge of directing traffic turned out to be a beautiful girl with outstanding appearance and a unique temperament. "Hello, what's the matter?" Not only was his attitude very gentle, but his voice was as pleasant as a lark, which made Zhang Fengjai's inner unhappiness disappear immediately. "Excuse me, where is Ningji Medical College? And which bus should I take?" Zhang Fengjai asked with a solid smile on his face. "Go to the stop sign over there." Pointing to the stop sign next to the road on the west side, the pretty traffic policeman warned carefully. "You can take bus number 21, number 29, number 69, and number 301. These buses will pass by the entrance of the medical school." "Thank you." After bowing with one hand and thanking him, Zhang Fengjai stepped towards the intersection where the light had just turned green. However, when he glanced at the other party's male and female palace, which was glowing green, he finally couldn't help but give a reminder. "Girl, don't force your marriage. Let it go when it's time to let it go." After the reminder, Zhang Fengjai strode through the intersection, and then went straight to the stop sign 20 meters away. Looking at the young man in Taoist robes who went straight to the stop sign, Pan Ting showed an extremely shocked look in her eyes. Because the problem she is facing now is that she doesn't know how to deal with her boyfriend who cheated on her best friend. One is a lover of 2 years, and the other is a close friend for nearly 10 years. However, the sudden reminder from the young man in Taoist robes just now made her gradually understand the truth, that is, the person who is too strong is not sweet, and the person who betrays her is not worth dealing with. Perhaps because he had done a lot of good deeds today, as soon as he reached the stop sign next to the road, an air-conditioned bus 301 stopped right next to him. Although the air-conditioned bus is $1 more expensive than the ordinary bus, compared with the strange looks from others, the cost of $1 is still within the range that Zhang Fengjai can bear. At the same time, the experience on the intercity bus to Ningji made him clearly aware of his own shortcomings, that is, under his seemingly cold and indifferent appearance, he is actually a good old man full of love. Therefore, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble caused by being nosy, he directly chose the seat behind the rear of the car, then closed his eyes and rested. He waited until the sound in the car sounded to remind him that he had arrived at the medical school, then he opened his eyes and got out of the car with his baggage. Beside mountains and rivers, with qi and qi in the mountains, the 5 elements are interdependent. It is a feng shui treasure place that gathers culture and wealth. Standing 30 meters away from the gate of the medical school, Zhang Fengjai carefully observed the overall layout of the medical school and couldn't help but nod in praise. It seems that the person in charge of the site selection and construction of the medical school hired a real feng shui expert with the ability to measure feng shui and the world. After retracting his attention to the feng shui layout of the medical school building, Zhang Fengjai's eyes showed surprise and nervousness as he looked at the college students coming in and out. 4 years ago, when he was 14 years old, in the Taoist temple on the top of Mouse Mountain, a girl suddenly came. She always had a quiet and elegant smile on her face, as if she was a fairy who could not eat the fireworks of the world. The fairy-like girl's name was Bai Jinjiao, and she came from Bai village, about 10 miles away from Rat Mountain. Bai Jinjiao's father, Bai Jinghua, was one of the first businessmen to start a business after China's reform and opening up, and eventually became successful, so he moved to the city when she was very young. However, when Bai Jinjiao was 17 years old, her father suddenly encountered great trouble in his business, and had to return to Shushan to ask his third grandfather for help, so he let her live in the Taoist temple for a month. Perhaps it was because they both liked a quiet environment, or perhaps it was because they both knew information that the other didn't know. In a month, except for resting in their respective rooms at night, the two could be said to be good friends who talked about everything. Although they didn't completely open their hearts to each other until Bai Jinjiao left Shijiang's Taoist temple, Zhang Fengjai knew that he had fallen in love with this fairy who was not worldly. At the same time, he could also feel Bai Jinjiao's affection for him. And this was one of the main reasons why he took the initiative to find Lin Shalan to break off the engagement. After taking a deep breath and dispelling the thoughts of memories, Zhang Fengjai walked towards the gate of the medical school. Since Ningji Medical College has always adhered to the principle of open-door education and does not prohibit anyone from visiting or playing in the college, he entered the campus smoothly without any obstruction. Although the medical college covers a large area and has many buildings, they are basically built according to the trend of yin and yang and the 5 elements. Therefore, according to the means of mutual generation of the 5 elements and separation of yin and yang, he went straight to the student dormitory on the west side of the medical college. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 18. Ningji Medical College. Brother Liang, the weather is fine today. In order to live up to this good time, how about you and I recite poems along the way to express our feelings? There is an artificial lake about 100 meters away from the girls' dormitory. To the east of the artificial lake is a green grassland. On the grassland, a girl with long hair, wearing a white-waisted long skirt, with a stunning face and a fairy-like temperament, whispered to a young man who was over 1.8 meters tall, handsome, and elegant beside her with a slightly shy look. My foolish brother is not as knowledgeable as my brother, I'm afraid I can't do it. The handsome young man with elegant temperament responded to the girl without hiding the deep admiration in his eyes. Zhang Fengjai, who was about 30 meters away from the artificial lake, was breathing rapidly, clenching his fists, and looking at the girl in the white skirt with disbelief in his eyes. Because the girl in the white dress with a stunning appearance and fairy-like temperament is Bai Jinjiao, whom he has always been thinking about. Shy and charming, with eyes full of admiration. At this moment, Bai Jinjiao and the handsome young man are obviously a couple in love. When they parted at Chushan, although they did not express their feelings to each other, Bai Jinjiao personally cut a strand of black hair as a parting gift in front of her third grandfather and her father. Black hair, love. Zhang Fengjai always thought that the reason why Bai Jinjiao gave him black hair was to express that she also liked him and was willing to spend her life with him privately. But now it seems that it is probably his own whimsical delusion. That's right. Bai Jinjiao not only has a stunning appearance and a fairy-like temperament, but also a rich second generation from a prominent family, a standard white, rich, and beautiful. How could a poor loser like me who has nothing be worthy of the other party? The love between us is gone, and we are strangers from now on. Taking out a strand of black hair that he had been nurturing with his spiritual power day and night, Zhang Fengjai, with a look of sadness and despair in his eyes, sighed softly. Unable to control the grief in his mind, he spat out a mouthful of blood directly at the scent bag containing the black hair in his hand. Puff. Watching the scent bag containing the black hair being soaked in the spitted blood, the sadness and despair in Zhang Fengjai's eyes were gradually replaced by indifference. Then, he turned his head to an ordinary girl who had been paying attention to him for a long time and was wearing a pair of black-framed glasses, and asked with a hoarse voice. "Classmate, can you please give the scent bag to the girl named Bai Jinjiao?" Looking at the Taoist boy with a pale face like paper, looking at the trace of blood left at the corner of his mouth, and looking at the sadness in his clear eyes, the girl with glasses suddenly felt a pain in her heart for some reason. "No problem, I'll give it to senior sister Bai now." After reaching out to take the blood-stained scent bag, the girl with glasses clenched her pink fist and promised solemnly. "Thank you." After nodding and thanking him, Zhang Fengjai turned around and looked at Bai Jinjiao, who was holding the handsome young man's right hand. After a miserable laugh, he turned around and walked away from the artificial lake. Afterwards, he ignored the surprised eyes of the students and pedestrians around him, and directly used the Qingfeng step in Taoism, turning into a breeze and leaving the medical school. "Sister Bai." The girl with glasses ran to Bai Jinjiao and first looked down at the hands held together. But when she saw Bai Jinjiao wearing a pair of white gloves, the girl with glasses greeted her with a hint of doubt in her eyes. "Hello, junior sister." Turning her head to look at the girl with glasses who she didn't know at all, Bai Jinjiao responded with a smile. "Sister Bai, someone asked me to give you the sachet just now." Handing the blood-stained sachet in her hand to Bai Jinjiao, the girl with glasses stared at her eyes and reminded her. After seeing the blood-stained sachet, Bai Jinjiao's eyes flashed with a look of doubt, because she didn't know who gave it to her, nor did she know why the other party gave it to her. However, when she opened the sachet and saw a strand of black hair in it, she immediately asked the girl with glasses with surprise in her eyes. "Schoolmate, where is the person who asked you to pass on the sachet? He's gone." Turning her head to look in the direction of the artificial lake, she found that the Taoist boy who made people feel pity was gone, and shook her head and said to Bai Jinjiao, "Why did he leave? Why didn't he come to see me?" Bai Jinjiao, holding the sachet tightly, asked in a puzzled voice. After hearing Bai Jinjiao's question, she recalled the despair in the eyes of the Taoist boy and the sadness when he vomited blood, and the girl with glasses couldn't help but feel sorry for him. "Sister Bai, although I don't know what your relationship is with the young man in the blue robe, I can see how much he loves you. Because the blood on the sachet in your hand is what he just vomited because of excessive sadness." "The blood just vomited?" After hearing the reminder from the glasses schoolgirl for Zhang Fengjai's grievance, Bai Jinjiao quickly stretched out her tightly clenched jade hands, and when she saw the blood stains on her white gloves, She quickly understood what was going on, and her face turned pale and stepped back a few steps. Jinjeo, be careful. Seeing Bai Jinjeo retreating and about to fall, the handsome young man immediately stepped forward and hugged her waist, and reminded her tenderly. Let go. Bai Jinjeo, whose pale face was instantly covered with frost and whose eyes showed a cold look, directly scolded. Jinjeo, what's wrong with you? The handsome young man, with a hint of gloom in his eyes, asked with an elegant smile. Senior Gu, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it just now. The reason why the beloved who had been waiting so long left with grief and vomiting blood was entirely because of the misunderstanding between herself and Gu Yuanxian, who was elegant and known as one of the 4 school idols of the medical school. But thinking about the conversation and handshake just now, it was just for rehearsing the drama to welcome freshmen to the school, and the responsibility was not on the other party, so the gentle Bai Jinjeo, after trying to calm down her self-blame, immediately apologized to Gu Yuanxian. At the same time, thinking about the reason for the misunderstanding of her beloved, she regained her usual indifferent expression and said, Senior Gu, Jinjeo is tired and needs a long rest, so please ask someone else to perform the drama for the Huangzhen party. Without giving Gu Yuanxian any chance to persuade her, Bai Jinjeo took off her high heels and ran towards the artificial lake like crazy, then went around the artificial lake and ran straight to the gate of the medical school. Looking at Bai Jinjeo, who left without caring about her image, Gu Yuanxian breathed quickly, clenched his fists, and veins on his forehead bulged, and a terrifying cold light flashed in his eyes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 19. Ningji Medical College. Ever since he saw Bai Jinjeo at the freshman military training a year ago, Gu Yuanxian has completely fallen in love with this fairy-like girl and has made up his mind to pursue her. In order to win her heart, he not only rejected the pursuit of countless goddesses in the college, but also spent countless efforts and money to create an opportunity for the two of them to be alone. Just like this time, in order to allow Bai Jinjeo to participate in the drama performance to welcome freshmen to the school, and to be willing to play the male and female protagonists Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai with him, he spent tens of thousands of yuan just to bribe her 3 roommates and besties. Now, the other party, just because of a sachet stained with blood, for a boy who has never appeared, not only did he resolutely quit the role of the heroine of the drama, but also scolded him coldly. This made Gu Yuanxian feel extremely angry, and at the same time, he also had a strong hatred for the boy who had never appeared. There was even a trace of crazy murderous intent. Hello, junior sister. When thinking of meeting Brother Hu on the road outside the school and the methods he used to secretly deal with Bai Jinjeo's pursuers, Gu Yuanxian's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he greeted the girl with glasses with an elegant smile on his face again. Hello, Senior Gu. Facing Gu Yuanxian's elegant smile, the girl with glasses immediately lowered her head with a blushing face. Zhang Fengjai, who left the medical school quickly, did not stop performing the Qingfeng step. With the idea of venting his inner sadness, he rushed towards the remote direction. When he came to an ancient stone bridge across the river, he was suddenly awakened by a pair of stone lions on both sides of the stone bridge. Because he felt a strong hostility and a very strong and deadly danger from the bodies of the pair of stone lions. Whether it is a tower bridge or a building, before completion, 1 or 2 pairs of stone sculptures of mythical beasts are generally invited to guard the peace of one side. This is a custom in many places. But what most people don't know is that the guardian beasts they invited are basically decorations. Because many people who don't understand Feng Shui mistakenly believe that as long as it is a stone-carved beast and placed on both sides of the gate or at both ends of the bridge, it will be fine. In fact, that is a big mistake. First, the gods recognize it. If the stone-carved beast you invite is the kind of crudely made or not professionally carved, the gods will not possess the stone beast at all. According to Zhang Fenjai's third grandfather, there are probably only 2 people in the whole Huaxia country who can carve stone sculptures with gods possessed. Second, the process, location and specific time of placement. Inviting gods is very ritualistic. As the person who invites gods, not only must you bathe and change clothes in advance, but you must also prepare 3 plates, 6 bowls, and 9 incense offerings in advance, and place them in the best position to resonate with the gods within a specific time. Therefore, most of the guardian beasts in front of the mansions and bridges are just a decoration. However, although the guardian stone lions of the stone bridge in front of him are not decorations, Zhang Fenjai doesn't understand why the other party is inexplicably hostile to him. He reached out and took out a talisman he had drawn from his bag, and threw it directly at the stone lion on the right side of the stone bridge, while pinching his hand and chanting a spell. The 3 pure ones show their magical powers, and the gods descend to the mortal world. As the talisman that floated to the top of the stone lion's head burned automatically and gradually transformed into an identical male lion with flames all over its body, the originally motionless stone lion raised its head as if it suddenly came to life. The originally gray stone eyes turned scarlet, and then glared at the fire lion transformed by the talisman. And with this glance, the fire lion transformed by the talisman was not only directly shattered, but Zhang Fenjai, who was pinching his hand, groaned and took several steps back, then spat out a mouthful of blood with a pale face. Offer to cultivate spirits. Looking at the stone lion that had regained its calm, Zhang Fenjai's face changed slightly and he shouted in a lost voice. Then, he quickly glanced around, and his eyes finally stopped on a big tree 30 meters away. Regardless of the mental trauma caused by the destruction of the talisman just now, the Qingfeng step allowed him to rush to the tree quickly, and the cloud ladder allowed him to reach the top of the tree in 2 or 3 steps. Standing on a branch as thick as a chopstick at the top of the tree, Zhang Fenjai looked down at the stone bridge and the geographical trend of several miles around the stone bridge, with a look of doubt in his eyes. Whether it is the location of the stone bridge or the geographical trend around it, it is neither a top feng shui treasure land nor a so-called evil place. So why can ordinary guarding stone lions have spiritual intelligence and cultivate fierce spiritual power? Just when Zhang Fenjai was wondering about the reason why the stone lions had spiritual intelligence, he suddenly felt a sense of powerlessness, which made him change his face. He quickly grabbed the branches around him to prevent himself from falling directly from the tree, and then used the means of internal vision to check the situation of powerlessness in his body. Then, a bitter smile appeared on his face. The double blow of emotional and spiritual pain caused the spiritual power stored in his dantian to automatically enter the process of warming up his injuries, which led to the speed of spiritual power consumption, and it was no longer able to continue to reduce the weight of his body. In the end, due to the sudden increase in body weight, the chopstick-thin branches under his feet were broken. After forcibly extracting a trace of spiritual power from his dantian and allowing himself to safely reach the bottom of the tree, Zhang Fenjai, who was completely exhausted, leaned directly on the trunk of the tree. Extracting the spiritual power in the dantian is equivalent to forcibly overdrawing the potential of the physical body, which temporarily puts his ironclad body in a state of pan-force. He took a deep breath and estimated the time it would take for the dantian's spiritual power to recover. 3 hours. It would take at least 3 hours for the spiritual power in the dantian to recover and completely relieve the state of pan-force in the body, allowing him to walk like a normal person. Looking up at the setting sun and the pair of stone lions that gave him a sense of fatal danger, Zhang Fenjai knew that the environment here was not suitable for him to meditate. But the dilemma of arriving in Ningji city made him not know who to ask for help next. Bai Jinjiao. The picture in his mind had not yet fully emerged, and he was directly dispelled. Lin Chalan. Although her picture completely emerged, he rejected it without any consideration. Yang Guo's Hung. Although he was a more suitable candidate, considering that the other party was investigating a homicide case and might not have time to pick him up, he could only helplessly choose to give up. It seems that he really has to stay in a deserted place for 5 hours. He shook his head with a wry smile, and when he was about to sit cross-legged with his hands on the ground, a business card suddenly fell from his sleeves, which made him look hesitant. Because the business card with a faint fragrance was Solitsi, whom he met on the intercity bus when he first arrived in Ningji City. Although the other party urged her to call him, Zhang Fengjai was still hesitating whether to continue to contact the other party. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 20. At first, in order to make up for his psychological guilt, he used Taoism to calculate the reason why the other party was kidnapped, but found that the root cause was not only directly related to Sulitsi's blood relatives, but also the subsequent consequences caused by the disaster were more complicated. For the sorcerers who practice Taoism, the consequences are the most ferocious beasts, the most deadly poison, and the disaster that they want to avoid. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai didn't want to have too much contact with Solitsi from the bottom of his heart. However, when the orange-red light of the setting sun was gradually absorbed by the pair of stone lions on the bridge, a flash of fear in his eyes made him immediately put aside his hesitation and concerns, and immediately took out the mobile phone artifact Nokia 1100 that he spent more than 100 red tickets to buy, and then called according to the number on the business card. Xintang Building. Since Zhang Fengjai followed Yang Guo's Hung to leave Xintang Building, Solitsi, who returned to the office, had no mood to work at all. After simply arranging some work, she sat in the office guarding her mobile phone and landline, waiting for the phone to ring. From more than 10 o'clock in the morning until she got off work at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, she never took her eyes off her mobile phone and landline, but what made her extremely disappointed was that, apart from a dozen work calls, she did not wait for the expected call. "Minister, why haven't you left yet?" Xiaolin, who was responsible for sorting out documents and contracts, couldn't help but push open the door of the minister's office after seeing the lights were still on. Looking at Solitsi staring at her mobile phone blankly, looking at her delicate face without a trace of flaws, Xiaolin, who was similar in age to her, showed a fascinated look in his eyes. However, when thinking of the huge gap between them, Xiaolin quickly extinguished his unrealizable extravagant hopes and reminded softly, "Oh, I'll leave now." Xiaolin's reminder made Solitsi sober up from her waiting thoughts. She looked up at the clock on the wall and found that it was already 7:30 in the evening, so she quickly replied to Xiaolin outside the door. Then, she simply sorted out the documents and picked up her phone to leave. But at this moment, a strange phone number appeared on the screen of the mobile phone that suddenly rang. I don't know why, when seeing the strange phone number on the mobile phone, Solitsi had a very strong feeling in her heart that this number was from Zhang Fengjai. So, Solitsi, who quickly answered the phone, asked with a little excitement, "Hello, is this Ye Zi? Sister Li Zi, it's me." The voice she had been waiting for a long time came from the phone immediately. "Ye Zi, what's wrong with you?" Solitsi could hear Zhang Fengjai's weak voice and asked nervously, "Sister Li Zi, I encountered a small problem. Can you please come to Shiqiao, which is 15 kilometers away from the medical school, to pick it up?" Zhang Feng's voice for help came from the phone. "No problem, wait for me." Without the slightest hesitation, Solitsi quickly hung up the phone, threw the sorted documents directly on the table, and then rushed out of the office with the car keys. As the director of the sales department of Yongsheng Group, Solitsi is considered a white-collar worker among the urban elites. Her annual salary and bonus have reached 7 figures, so she already has her own private car, a pure white BMW convertible sports car. Just as Solitsi quickly started the sports car and slowly left the parking lot, a black Mercedes-Benz sedan and a silver-gray Wuling commercial vehicle followed closely behind. After hanging up the phone, Zhang Fengjai reluctantly posed in a meditation posture and silently practiced the Taoist Heart Sutra that he had practiced since he was 3 years old, and began to restore the spiritual power consumed in his dantian bit by bit. As night fell, a chilly wind gradually blew over the deserted fields. At the same time, a pair of stone lions on the stone bridge gradually came to life and kept walking back and forth at both ends of the stone bridge. Of course, whether it was the chilly wind or the moving stone lions, they could only be seen when the yin-yang eyes were opened by a special secret method, and passing vehicles and pedestrians could not feel anything unusual. After walking back and forth 9 times, one of the stone lions that defeated the talisman fire lion cast its eyes directly at Zhang Fengjai, who was sitting cross-legged under the big tree, and a fierce red light gradually appeared in its stone eyes. Not good. When Zhang Fengjai saw the red light in the stone lion's eyes, which showed no strong murderous intent, he secretly said that it was not good, and immediately took out a talisman from the sleeve of his Taoist robe, an attack talisman used to save his life. However, when he wanted to mobilize a trace of spiritual power in his dantian to activate the talisman, the stone lion that rushed out of the stone bridge suddenly turned into a red light, rushed to him like lightning, and then opened its bloody mouth to swallow him directly. Since it was too late to mobilize the spiritual power to activate the life-saving talisman, facing the critical moment of life and death crisis, Zhang Fengjai immediately used the secret method of overdrawing potential to save himself. Yezi, where are you? Just when he was about to bite his tongue and perform a secret technique that could be completed in an instant, an extremely harsh break sound and an anxious shout made the stone lion quickly close its bloody mouth and quickly return to the stone bridge. Sister Li Zi, I'm here. I didn't expect Su Li Zi to appear so timely. I didn't expect Su Li Zi's appearance to make the stone lion so afraid. Zhang Fengjai, who was secretly relieved, immediately shouted loudly to Su Li Zi. Yi Zi, what's wrong with you? The soft and wet ground made it impossible for Su Li, who was wearing high heels, to walk smoothly. However, in order to find Zhang Fengjai as soon as possible, she took off her high heels and ran quickly, ignoring the damage caused by sharp stones and sharp weeds to her feet. In front of Zhang Fengjai, who had undergone special training by his second grandfather since childhood, was basically able to achieve night vision. When she saw a pair of Su Li's pink feet, scratched by sharp weeds, a touch of emotion flashed in her eyes. Sister Lizzie, I'm fine. Yi, come on, sister, help you up. Using the light from her phone's built-in flashlight, Su Li felt a little heartache when she saw Zhang Fengjai, who was dressed in tattered Taoist robes and pale, and quickly bent down to hold his arm. Perhaps because of the darkness, or perhaps because of worry, Su Li, who was wearing a professional suit, did not think about the problem of being exposed at all. But Zhang Fengjai, who could see at night, could clearly see the peaks and valleys exposed when he bent down, and the pink halo that was squeezed out when he helped him up with both hands, which immediately gave him the most primitive feeling. Impulsive reaction. The Bodhi tree has no tree, and the mirror is not a stand. The Buddha nature is always pure, where is the dust? The heart is the Bodhi tree, and the body is the mirror stand. The mirror is inherently pure, where is the dust?